The steady beep of the heart monitor echoed softly in room 312 of Lincoln Memorial Hospital, its rhythm steady, almost taunting in its precision. Naomi Elise Carver lay still, watching the golden strands of late-afternoon sunlight dance across the sterile wall. Her thin fingers absent-mindedly traced the edge of the crisp hospital blanket. Even in frailty, she held on to the quiet elegance that had always defined her. Her dark auburn hair was neatly tied into a low ponytail, and her hospital gown was arranged as properly as one could manage at 36. Never in her life had she imagined she'd be here, trapped in a battle with her own immune system. The illness had crept in quietly, stealing her vitality first, then her sense of control, and now perhaps everything else. But Naomi was a financial consultant. She lived in facts, precision, and balance. She had always believed that every problem could be solved, if only you looked at it hard enough. The gentle buzz of her phone drew her attention. A message from Julian. "On my way. We need to talk." Just those few words were enough to make her stomach tighten. After 9 years of marriage, she had learned to read between the lines of Julian's carefully composed texts. Her husband, the ever-composed corporate strategist, never said or did anything without intention. The door creaked open, and in stepped Nurse Deandra Wells. Her soft-soled shoes barely made a sound across the polished floor. Her coiled hair was wrapped in one of her signature navy scarves, and a rose-gold digital watch glinted on her wrist. As she adjusted Naomi's IV line, Deandra offered a brief smile. "Vitals are improving today," she said, her voice warm yet firm. The kind of steadiness Naomi had come to rely on over the past several weeks. But then she paused, studying Naomi's face with knowing eyes. "Something's weighing on you," Naomi responded with a faint, strained smile. "Julian's coming." Deandra's expression shifted. Just barely. First time this week. The words unspoken between them were louder than any conversation. Naomi had been fighting for her life, while Julian Patrick Carver had been notably absent, always citing high-stakes deals or corporate deadlines. Even now, she could picture him clearly. His tailored navy suit, chestnut hair flawlessly styled, those calculating hazel eyes already scanning the next opportunity. The sharp sound of designer soles echoed down the hallway, drawing both women's eyes to the doorway. Julian stepped into the room. But he wasn't alone. Just behind him stood a younger woman. Her toned frame was hard to miss, even under the loose-fitting high-end dress that did little to conceal her rounded belly. Time seemed to freeze as Naomi's hazel eyes traveled from Julian's carefully neutral expression to the woman's uneasy smile, then finally to the unmistakable curve at her midsection. The realization struck with the exactitude of a spreadsheet audit. Julian cleared his throat, his voice adopting the same calm cadence he used in tense stakeholder meetings. "This is Marissa Lane. We're expecting a child together." The heart monitor quickened slightly, the only sign that Naomi's internal world had just shattered. She had spent nearly a decade mastering the art of self-control, of being the quiet foundation behind Julian's meteoric rise. Even now, her expression remained nearly unreadable. Marissa shifted awkwardly, placing a hand over her belly. "I told him this wasn't the right time or place," she murmured. "But there's never really a right time, is there?" Julian straightened his tie. "Naomi, I've already spoken with my attorney. Considering your condition and the situation, it's better for everyone if we move forward quickly and discreetly." "Out," said a voice. It wasn't Naomi's. It was Deandra's, low, steady, and sharp. She had moved between Naomi's bed and the couple without warning, her stance firm, her presence suddenly commanding the room. "This is a private," Julian began. "No, Mr. Carver," Deandra cut him off. "This is a hospital. My patient's vitals just spiked, and she's managing a life-threatening autoimmune illness, exacerbated by stress." She took a step forward, her voice lowering. "Leaving someone when they're fragile is simple. What takes real strength is facing the mirror afterward." Her words struck like slaps. Julian's polished exterior flickered for a brief second, but he recovered quickly. "We'll talk later," he said to Naomi, turning away. Marissa hesitated, cheeks flushed with shame, then followed him out without another word. As silence settled in the room, Naomi exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. A single tear slipped down her cheek, not for her marriage, but for the years spent shrinking herself to fit a mold for someone who never really saw her. Outside, the sunlight now glowed amber against the hospital window. A siren cried out in the distance, someone else's emergency, someone else's moment of reckoning. In room 312, Naomi Elise Carver finally let the tears fall, while Deandra stood beside her. Her rose-gold watch marked the quiet countdown to something neither of them could yet name. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln Memorial's pharmacy buzzed overhead as Naomi stood in line, gripping her discharge documents. 3 days had passed since Julian's visit. Now she was leaving behind the sterile safety of the hospital for a world that felt unfamiliar and unforgiving. Her auburn hair hung loose today, forming a curtain between her and the inquisitive stares. Word had traveled fast through the hospital halls. "That'll be $840. The pharmacy technician said, pushing the prescriptions across the counter. "Your insurance claim was denied." Naomi blinked, her consultant mind instantly crunching numbers. "There must be a mistake. I have premium coverage through my husband," the word caught in her throat. "Through Julian's company." The technician hesitated, her tone softening. "The policy was canceled about 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks ago, while she was still in the ICU, hooked to machines, fighting her own body. That betrayal hadn't been an accident or a missed payment. It had been a decision. Cold, deliberate. Julian had already begun erasing her, one policy, one password at a time. Before Naomi could respond, a warm hand landed gently on her shoulder. "Put it on this," Deandra said, sliding a credit card across the counter before Naomi could object. "Consider it a loan. The kind you pay forward, not back." The drive through Lincoln's quiet streets was nearly silent. What once felt like home now resembled a map she no longer recognized. They passed the luxury gym where Julian spent his mornings, probably where Marissa had first caught his attention with her flawless figure and curated social media smile. Every familiar landmark felt like a betrayal now. Every turn of the wheel reminded her that the life she thought she'd built was nothing more than a carefully arranged illusion. The gym, the bank, the florist he never remembered the name of. They all whispered secrets she hadn't wanted to hear. "I can't go back to the house," Naomi whispered suddenly. "Not yet," Deandra said simply, adjusting the route without needing explanation. "My spare room's small, but it's yours for as long as you need it." They turned onto a modest street lined with little bungalows. An ambulance roared by, its siren wailing. Through the rear window, Naomi caught a glimpse of the paramedic behind the wheel, a bald man with a thick beard. Something about his presence tugged at a distant memory, but it slipped away before she could hold on to it. Inside Deandra's cozy home, filled with earthy tones and the faint scent of lavender, Naomi finally let herself exhale. Her hands trembled as she powered on her laptop and tried logging into their joint financial accounts. "The passwords aren't working," she said, eyes narrowing. Her instincts fired instantly. Every alert in her mind lit up. "Of course they're not," Deandra said, setting a mug of chamomile tea beside her. "Men like Julian don't leave loose ends." Naomi's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Years of experience kicked in as she accessed hidden pathways she had built into their financial systems, just in case. Data filled the screen. Unusual transfers, concealed accounts, red flags dating back months. The numbers didn't lie. They told the story she hadn't been willing to see. Quiet exits, financial diversions, a long, calculated departure. Every spreadsheet, every forgotten invoice, every transfer, it was all right there, a roadmap to her erasure. "He's been planning this," she said hollowly. "Canceling the insurance, draining our savings. He's been erasing me from his life." Her phone buzzed. A new email, this one from Julian's attorney. The divorce paperwork was ready. They wanted her signature by Friday. "You know what the worst part is?" Naomi's voice cracked slightly. "I kept everything perfectly categorized. Every receipt, every transaction," Naomi said quietly. "I was so focused on keeping his accounts balanced, I didn't realize our marriage was already bankrupt." Deandra sat beside her, their reflections faint and spectral in the laptop screen. She adjusted her scarf before speaking. "Back in nursing school," she began, "they taught us that the body keeps score. Every hurt, every betrayal, our cells remember, but they also taught us something else." Naomi looked at her. "Healing doesn't always look the way we think it should." The words struck Naomi harder than she expected, cutting through the fog of bitterness that had taken root inside her. She had worn strength like armor, built out of spreadsheets and perfectly filed documents, but inside, she'd been unraveling for years. A text notification lit up Naomi's phone. Unknown number. Hey, this is Jesse from Lincoln EMS. We found your wallet in the ambulance after your discharge. Nothing missing, just thought you'd want it back. Let me know when and where to drop it off. The name Jesse stirred something distant in her memory. Jesse Colburn. Deandra's eyes widened slightly. You know him? I think so, Naomi said, frowning. We went to high school together. He was always... Her voice trailed off as she pictured a younger Jesse. Gentle eyes, quick smile, the kind of guy who helped without expecting anything in return. For a moment, something shifted inside her. A thread pulled loose from the knot of her grief, tugging her back to a time when life felt simpler. Another buzz from her phone. A social media post. Julian. He and Marissa at a charity gala. His hand resting proudly on her pregnant belly. The caption, excited for new beginnings. Feeling blessed. The screen blurred as Naomi's vision clouded with tears. But they weren't tears of heartbreak. They burned with something else. Anger. Anger at Julian, at herself, at the years spent vanishing into someone else's shadow. She had smiled through the betrayals, made excuses for the distance, adjusted her needs until they were barely visible, all to keep the illusion intact. Her fingers steadied on the keyboard as she typed a reply to Jesse. Thank you. Tomorrow works. It's been a long time. Outside, Lincoln's soft rain began to fall, tapping gently on Deandra's windows. In the spare room that had become her temporary refuge, Naomi Elise Carver opened a new spreadsheet. But this time, she wasn't managing someone else's life. She was charting her own return. Each cell she filled was a declaration, a line in the sand, a step toward reclaiming the parts of herself she had buried to keep a man who had already walked away. Jesse Colburn's ambulance sat idle outside Buddy's diner, its red and white exterior catching the dim Lincoln morning light. Naomi watched it from her booth, both hands curled around a coffee mug she hadn't touched. She'd chosen this diner on purpose, far from the polished lives of Julian and his club friends. Here, there was no chance of a run-in. The bell over the door jingled. Jesse walked in, still in uniform from his shift. The fluorescent lights overhead made his quiet confidence stand out. His beard was neatly trimmed. A small backpack was slung over his shoulder. Her wallet was inside. Naomi, he greeted warmly, sliding into the seat across from her. She remembered him from high school, though time had carved deeper shadows into his features. Up close, she noticed a faint scar just above his right eyebrow, and the way his eyes reflected both resilience and quiet sorrow. Thanks for finding my wallet, Naomi began, but Jesse shook his head gently. I didn't just find it, he admitted, retrieving it from his bag. I saw your name on the ID and decided to hold on to it myself. Figured maybe you'd want to talk to someone familiar. A waitress approached. Her name tag read Dorothy, and she carried a pot of coffee along with a knowing smile. The usual, Jesse. Haven't seen you in here a few days. Been on night shifts, Dot. But yeah, the usual. He glanced at Naomi's untouched cup. And maybe a fresh pour for both of us? Dorothy's sharp eyes landed on the hospital discharge bracelet still on Naomi's wrist. Coffee's not always great with meds, honey. How about some chamomile instead? My daughter swears by it when her lupus flares up. Before Naomi could even respond to the woman's uncanny intuition, a child's voice rang out behind the counter. Daddy. A girl, no more than 5, bounded toward them from a booth where she'd been coloring beside an older waitress. Her tight curls bounced as she launched herself into Jesse's arms. He caught her effortlessly. Hey, princess, he smiled, his entire demeanor softening. Thanks for watching her, Maria, he called toward the older waitress, who waved back with a warm, grandmotherly nod. Lily, Jesse said, turning his attention to the little girl. Can you say hi to my friend Naomi? Lily looked up at Naomi with wide, curious eyes. Your bracelet looks like Mommy's, she said softly. The words hovered in the space between them, fragile and unfiltered. Jesse's grip on his daughter's shoulder tightened slightly, and Naomi understood, instantly, why he'd kept her wallet, why he'd noticed her bracelet, why his eyes held that unspoken weight. Lily, Maria called from behind the counter, come help me count the sugar packets. Once she skipped away, Jesse's shoulders eased a fraction. My wife, Laura, cancer, he said simply. 2 years ago. His tone was steady, but the grief was right beneath the surface. You learn a lot about hospitals when someone you love is sick, about strength too. I'm so sorry, Naomi whispered, truly meaning it. Her own crisis suddenly felt small in comparison. Don't be, Jessie said, voice gentle but steady. Pain's still pain. Just because someone else's seems bigger doesn't make yours any less real. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Julian's lawyer. Another reminder about the divorce papers. Naomi's hand trembled slightly as she turned her phone face down. Want to talk about it? Jessie asked, his voice low and free of pressure. And surprisingly, she did. The words spilled out about Julian, about Marissa, about the slow, methodical unraveling of her life, the financial sabotage, the canceled insurance, the betrayal disguised as strategic planning. Jessie didn't interrupt. His presence was as steady as a heartbeat. You know what's strange? Naomi said finally, as Dorothy quietly placed a mug of chamomile tea in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Everyone keeps saying they're sorry about Julian, but I'm realizing I'm not just grieving him. I'm grieving who I let myself become with him. Quiet, polished, invisible. Jessie's eyes met hers. I remember you in high school, he said. You used to laugh so loud in calculus that Mr. Franklin would pretend to be annoyed, but he was smiling the whole time. The memory struck like a jolt. She had been that girl, before the precision, before the silence, before the posture. She swallowed hard, feeling something tighten in her chest. How long had it been since she'd laughed without caution, without checking the room first to make sure it was okay? She hadn't just lost Julian, she'd lost her spontaneity, her comfort in her own skin. Her phone buzzed again, an email from her doctor. Follow-up appointments, treatment plans, bills she couldn't cover without insurance. Reality landed hard. I should go, Naomi said, reaching for her wallet. Jessie gently stopped her. I've got it, he said, then added quickly, not as a handout, as a friend. He pulled a business card from his wallet and scribbled something on the back. My cell. And Lily's dance recital is this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a bunch of 5-year-olds in glittery tutus. If you want a break. Naomi looked down at the card, then up at Jessie. This man who had lost so much and still had space for kindness, who didn't try to fix her, who remembered who she'd been before life dimmed her light. And still, part of her hesitated. She wasn't sure she deserved this kind of uncomplicated goodness. It felt like touching something too fragile, too rare. What if she broke it too? Outside, Lincoln's morning fog was finally clearing. Strips of blue sky peeked between clouds. From behind the counter, Lily waved goodbye, her smile missing 2 front teeth. And for the first time since the hospital room, Naomi felt something shift inside her, like a window cracking open, just enough to let the light in. She slipped Jessie's card into her wallet, beside the fractured remains of her former life. Sometimes she was beginning to understand healing started by remembering who you were, before the world told you to disappear. The law office lobby gleamed with calculated perfection, chrome, glass, and silence. So much like Julian himself. Naomi sat upright in a black leather chair, her simple blazer a stark contrast to the parade of designer suits flowing past. Her fingers ran along the edges of the divorce documents, each page slicing into what remained of her dignity. Mr. Carver will see you now, the receptionist called, using that certain tone reserved only for soon-to-be ex-wives. Naomi stood, squared her shoulders. Her morning meds had left her joints stiff, but she refused to show it. Her heels clicked with quiet defiance as she walked down a hallway lined with abstract artwork, pieces likely worth more than her entire year's income. The door to the conference room opened. Julian stood by the window, looking like something out of a corporate profile feature. His lawyer, Richard Walsh, sat at the massive table, documents aligned with surgical precision. But it was the third person in the room that caught Naomi off guard. Marissa's steps faltered slightly, her pregnancy now undeniable in a sleek designer maternity dress. Julian turned toward Naomi, his voice carefully measured with that professional concern he reserved for boardroom conflicts. I thought it would be efficient to handle everything in one sitting. Efficient, Naomi echoed softly, the word turning bitter in her mouth. She sat, setting her own folder neatly on the table. The figures she had uncovered from their accounts burned in her mind like damning evidence. Richard Walsh began sliding documents across to her. Mr. Carver has been more than generous with the proposed settlement, given the circumstances. The circumstances, Naomi interrupted, her voice calm. Of him canceling my health insurance while I was still in the hospital? Or perhaps, she continued evenly, the circumstances of him shifting our joint accounts into private holdings. Julian's polished mask cracked, just for a second. That's not. I'm a financial consultant, Julian, Naomi said, opening her folder and spreading out pages. Transfer logs, account summaries, routing details. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she pushed through the ache, reminding herself that this wasn't just confrontation. This was reclamation. Every page she laid down on the polished table was another fragment of truth, another piece of herself reclaimed from the wreckage. Marissa shifted uncomfortably, one hand resting protectively on her belly. I didn't know, she said quietly, about the insurance, or any of it. Of course you didn't, Naomi replied without heat. That would have ruined the perfect story, wouldn't it? Walsh cleared his throat. These accusations are documented, Naomi cut in. Every transfer, every account, even the ones offshore. Her grip tightened on the table's edge as she felt a wave of nausea roll through her, but she didn't let it show. She couldn't. Not here. Not now. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steel. I spent 9 years making sure your books were flawless, Julian. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Silence descended like fog. Beyond the conference room window, the Lincoln skyline stretched in somber. Her phone buzzed. A message from Julian's voice finally cracked. His executive mask had slipped. She looked at high. All the D. I want, she said clearly, my health insur. I want my name on, and I want my fair share of everything we built, Tug. She turned to Marissa. And I want you to know exactly who you're choosing to trust. Marissa's face went pale. Julian, she said, turning to him. What is she talking about? She's upset, he began, but Naomi slid another sheet of paper across the table. It was a marriage record, one Julian had kept buried, a previous union he'd never mentioned, one that ended in sealed court documents and quiet settlements. Pattern recognition, Naomi said softly. It's what financial analysts do best. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jessie. Lily's asking if you're still coming to her recital tomorrow. No pressure, but we saved you a seat. If you want it. Naomi stood, gathering her documents. Have your client review the attached records, she told Walsh. I'll expect a revised agreement by Monday. She paused at the door, glancing back at Julian. Oh, and one more thing, she added, voice even. I'm keeping my maiden name. Carver never really suited me anyway. The elevator ride blurred past. In the restroom off the lobby, Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she took her afternoon meds. Her reflection stared back, pale but upright, worn but not broken. Outside, spring rain was falling again, gentle but insistent. She opened her umbrella, bright yellow, vivid against the dull gray of the day. Her phone lit up with another message from Jessie. Grabbed chamomile tea from Buddy's. It's in the ambulance fridge if you need a friend. A small smile curved her lips. The first in a long while that felt like it came from her, not from obligation. She'd spent so long trying to be the perfect wife, she'd forgotten how to simply be herself. Maybe, just maybe, she could start relearning that. Beginning with a dance recital tomorrow. The community center auditorium buzzed with excitement. Laughter, camera clicks, and the flurry of 5-year-olds in tutus filled the air. Naomi hesitated in the doorway, clutching a small bouquet of daisies she'd picked up for Lily. Her body still ached from yesterday's meeting at the law office, but she doubled her dose and steeled herself not to miss this. You came. Lily's voice rang out over the chatter. She rushed forward, her sparkly pink tutu bouncing with every step. Dark curls bounced around her face, escaping what had likely once been a carefully done ballet bun. Jessie followed closely behind, smiling sheepishly, holding what looked like a mini hairstyling kit. Daddy can't do French braids, Lily announced matter-of-factly, eyeing Naomi's sleek ponytail with hope. Can you help? Jessie rubbed the back of his bald head. I've watched like 50 YouTube tutorials, but they all end up looking like a bird tried to build a nest. Something soft bloomed in Naomi's chest. She crouched beside Lily, ignoring the tug in her joints. I'd love to help, she said, then offered the daisies. These are for after your show. Lily's eyes lit up. Like real ballerinas get? Exactly like that. The changing room was a mess of sequins, hairspray, and last-minute touch-ups, but in the middle of it, Naomi found calm. Her fingers worked Lily's hair in smooth motions, muscle memory guiding her. She hadn't done this in years. Not since summer camps. Not since quiet moments with her own mother. "Did you do ballet too?" Lily asked, trying to sit still. "No," Naomi said, gently separating a section of hair. "But I used to play piano. I had recitals just like this." "What happened? Why did you stop?" The question came so innocently that it caught Naomi off guard. When had she stopped? Somewhere between becoming Mrs. Carver and maintaining Julian's polished image, her music had been pushed aside. First her piano turned into decor, then sold off when they updated the living room. "Sometimes," she said gently, "we forget the things that make us happy because we're too busy trying to make other people happy." A knock at the door revealed Jesse, looking amused and a little relieved at the transformation of his daughter's hair. "They're calling places in 5, he said, then paused as he took in Naomi's work. "You worked magic." "Daddy," Lily tugged at his sleeve. He was still in his uniform, straight from the ambulance shift. "Naomi used to play piano. Can she come see the one at our house? The one that used to be Mommy's?" Jesse's expression shifted, something between sorrow and thankfulness. "Let's get through your big moment first, princess." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver charm bracelet. "This was your mom's, from her first recital. Grandma thought you should wear it today." As he fastened it gently around Lily's wrist, Naomi felt like she was witnessing something sacred. She turned to step away, but Lily's small hand grabbed hers. "Stay," she said softly. Her eyes held a kind of quiet wisdom well beyond her years. "Daddy says it's okay to make new memories and still keep the old ones safe." The auditorium lights dimmed. Jesse rested a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Break a leg, princess." "Not literally. I've seen enough of those today." Lily giggled and threw her arms around Naomi in a sudden hug before running off to join her group. The purity of the gesture almost brought Naomi to tears. "You okay?" Jesse asked as they moved to their seats. "I'm just tired," she began, the default phrase she'd used so many times during her years with Julian. But Jesse's quiet presence made her reconsider. "Actually, no, I'm not okay," she admitted. "But maybe that's okay too." The music started, a soft, simple tune. 15 tiny dancers moved across the stage, doing their best to stay in sync. Lily stood front and center. Her eyes met theirs, and she grinned. Pure joy, untouched by courtrooms, insurance claims, or emotional wreckage. Naomi's phone buzzed again. A message from Julian's lawyer. A revised offer. She turned it face down without checking. This moment, the laughter, the tears, the music, it didn't belong to anger. It belonged to healing. "Thank you," she whispered to Jesse as Lily spun into a wobbly piqué. "Thanks for coming," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "It's been a while since." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It had been a while since his daughter had someone to braid her hair. Since he'd had someone to share these quiet joys with. Since laughter had filled their house without effort. On stage, Lily's bracelet caught the light. Old memories and new hope spun together in rhythm. A delicate balance of past and future. And in the dark of the auditorium, Naomi felt something shift, like a door unlocking after years of silence, like music returning to a piano left untouched. Some healing, she was learning, didn't come in grand declarations, but in small, sacred moments. A borrowed piano, braided hair, a bouquet of daisies, and the courage to begin again. Rain tapped softly against the windows of Jesse's modest craftsman home, giving the evening a quiet rhythm of its own. Naomi sat at Laura's piano, a beautiful upright Yamaha, worn smooth by memory and care. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly from the night's medication. "No pressure," Jesse said from the kitchen doorway, drying a dish with the kind of practiced ease that came from routine. "Lily's just excited to finally hear someone make music on it, instead of noise." 2 weeks had passed since the recital. 2 weeks of exchanged texts, quick hellos at Buddy's diner, and Lily's relentless invitations. "Come see our piano now." And now, here Naomi was, in a house that still carried traces of sorrow, but somehow felt wrapped in healing too. "I haven't played in years," Naomi admitted, but her fingers instinctively found middle C. The note rang out, clear, familiar, awakening something long buried. "Play something." Lily burst in from the kitchen, homework forgotten. "Please?" Daddy says Mommy used to play every night. Jessie froze, hand still on the dish towel. Lily. It's okay, Naomi said gently, understanding both the child's innocence and the father's instinct to shield. Her fingers settled on the keys, finding the opening to Fiorelli's. Muscle memory overrode the years of silence. The melody filled the living room, tentative at first, then stronger. Naomi fumbled a few notes, stumbled through parts that once flowed effortlessly, but the imperfection made it more human. More hers. Lily sat beside her, completely still. Jesse leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable, woven with history, pain, and something like gratitude. The last note faded just as Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from Deandra, 911, turn on local news. Now. Jesse reached for the remote. The small TV in the corner flickered to life. The headline made Naomi's blood go cold. Local executive under investigation for financial fraud. Julian's corporate headshot filled the screen, his practiced smile now unsettling beneath the bold breaking news banner. The reporter's voice overlaid the last echoes of music. Allegations of systematic fraud involving corporate healthcare and financial embezzlement. Sources indicate the probe began after irregularities were discovered in employee insurance accounts. Breathe, Jesse said beside her, voice low and grounding. Just breathe. Lily looked up at them, sensing the shift in energy. Is that the bad man who made you sick? Naomi hesitated. No, sweetheart, she said finally, her voice shaking. He didn't make me sick, but he made it harder to get better. Her phone buzzed again and again. Julian's lawyer, a barrage of alerts, urgent meetings, Marissa's panicked texts, the baby's trust fund, the accounts, what's going to happen? Even Julian himself. After months of silence, the message came. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Jesse glanced at Naomi's expression and immediately shifted into dad mode. Lily, he called toward the kitchen, remember that special hot chocolate recipe Grandma taught us? Think you could whip up a batch? Lily's face lit up, instantly understanding this was a grown-up moment. With extra marshmallows? Extra, he confirmed. They watched her skip off toward the kitchen, humming to herself before Jesse turned back to Naomi. What do you need? The question was so simple, so direct, and yet no one had asked her that in ages. Not during her diagnosis, not during Julian's betrayal, not during the chaos of courtrooms or settlement negotiations. Her fingers drifted to the piano keys, playing a hesitant, fractured melody. I need to not run away this time, she said finally. When things got hard with Julian, I shrank. I went quiet. I can't do that again. Jesse sat beside her on the bench, leaving just enough space between them. You know what we tell people in emergencies? He asked. Focus on the next breath. Just the next one. Everything else comes later. From the kitchen, they could hear Lily softly singing as she prepared the hot chocolate. The sound cocooned them, gentle and safe against the storm outside. I have to talk to him, Naomi said, voice steadier now. Not for him, for me. I need to finish this on my own terms. Jesse nodded. Want backup? I'm decent in a crisis. Despite everything, she smiled. Actually, would you mind if I stayed here a bit longer? Just playing? Her hands moved across the keys, gently coaxing out bits of old melodies. Music's always been how I make sense of the world. Stay as long as you need. He stood and walked toward the kitchen to oversee Lily's marshmallow counting efforts. Some things had to be faced alone, but facing them didn't mean she had to be alone. The TV still blared updates in the background, but Naomi let the music rise above it. With each note, her fingers unlocked pieces of herself, parts long buried. Outside, Lincoln's rain kept up its quiet rhythm. And somewhere in the kitchen, a little girl was measuring sweetness by the marshmallow. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, accusations, questions, consequences. But tonight, in this house that had learned to hold both grief and joy, Naomi let herself return to who she was before she became Mrs. Carver. One note at a time. The Lincoln Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit occupied a fluorescent-lit floor that smelled like coffee and paper toner. Naomi sat upright in an interview room, her analytical mind automatically noting everything, the security cameras in each corner, the water-stained ceiling tiles, the ticking of a wall clock, too loud, too persistent. Detective Marina Hayes studied the documents spread across the table. All printed copies of what Naomi had uncovered in Julian's accounts. Hayes wore a dark pantsuit and sensible shoes, the kind of wardrobe choice made by a woman who, like Naomi, had learned how to survive male-dominated spaces. Mrs. Carver. Miss Renee, Naomi corrected gently. I've reclaimed my name. Hayes gave a small nod of understanding and respect. Miss Renee, these records, they're incredibly detailed. Detective Hayes looked up from the table, eyes sharp. You documented everything. I'm a financial analyst, Naomi replied. Numbers tell stories, if you know how to listen. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water bottle. The morning's medication was fading, but she couldn't risk another dose. Not yet. She needed to stay clear, focused. And what story do these numbers tell? Naomi inhaled deeply. That my husband, ex-husband, wasn't just stealing from me. The insurance fraud, the offshore transfers, it was systematic. Other employees, other families. The door opened. Naomi's breath caught. Julian walked in, flanked by Richard Walsh and another detective. His facade was cracked, the expensive suit rumpled, his chestnut hair disheveled. This is highly irregular, Walsh began, but Detective Hayes cut him off. Your client requested to speak with Miss Renee. We're honoring that. Under supervised conditions. Julian's hazel eyes met Naomi's. They held none of their usual calculation, only desperation. Naomi, please, you have to help me explain. The board doesn't understand. Her voice surprised even herself with how steady it was. What about the employees, she asked. The families who lost their coverage, their children. It wasn't like that. I was reallocating funds to protect our investments. Our future. Our future. She almost laughed. You canceled my insurance while I was in the hospital. You were building a future with Marissa. He blinked, visibly shaken. Marissa left, he admitted, voice unraveling. After the news broke, she said she couldn't trust, couldn't risk it. For a moment, Naomi saw him. Not the man from glossy brochures, not the manipulator, just a man watching his empire collapse. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, what stirred in her was something closer to pity. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jesse. You've got this. We believe in you. She smiled, small but genuine. The we made her think of Lily, probably insisting Jesse include her. I can't help you, Julian, Naomi said finally. Not this time. You don't understand what this will do to me. I understand exactly what it will do, Naomi said, meeting Julian's eyes without flinching. I understand, because I lived through my own collapse. The difference is, I fell alone, in a hospital room. You chose this. Detective Hayes began gathering the documents, but Naomi wasn't done. The names in those files, they're not just numbers, they're people. People who trusted you, who believed in the system you exploited. They deserve the truth. Walsh started to interject, but Naomi stood. Her voice, once cautious, now rang with strength she hadn't known she had. I kept your secrets for 9 years, Julian. I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger. Not anymore. She turned to Detective Hayes. I'll testify. Whatever you need, those families deserve justice. The door opened again. Another officer entered, speaking quietly to Hayes. Julian was being moved to another room for further questioning. As they led him away, he looked back at Naomi. And this time, she saw fear. Real fear. Outside the Lincoln precinct, the spring air smelled faintly of rain. Naomi's body ached, demanding rest and medication, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Deandra stood by her car, still in her nursing scrubs, clearly straight from her shift. Thought you might need a familiar face. Thank you. Naomi meant it, more than just for the ride. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Jesse. Lily at her piano. Her face scrunched in concentration as she carefully plinked out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, one hesitant note at a time. You know, Deandra said as they drove through Lincoln's busy streets, in nursing, we're taught that healing isn't always about getting better. Sometimes it's about getting stronger, right where the breaks happened. Naomi stared out the window, watching the city drift past. A hospital room, a betrayal, a piano bench, a police interview room. Every crack she had once feared had somehow let in light. Did you ever imagine, Deandra asked, when you were in that hospital bed, that you'd be here, being the voice for others? Naomi touched her wrist where the hospital band used to be. No, she admitted. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes, you have to lose who you thought you were, to become who you're meant to be. Rain began to fall. Not harsh, just soft, cleansing. The Lincoln skyline faded behind them. Somewhere across town, a little girl was learning to play piano on the instrument that had once belonged to a woman she would never know. Her father was out saving lives in an ambulance. And here in Deandra's car, Naomi Elise Renee was finally truly coming home to herself. The room was small, but private, lined with sound-dampening panels and echoes of old practice sessions. Naomi sat the upright Yamaha, sheet music for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata spread open before her. 3 months of consistent practice had brought most of her technique back, though her fingers still stumbled over trickier passages. "You're getting better," Jesse said from the well-worn couch near the wall, his paramedic uniform wrinkled from a long shift. "Though I wouldn't know the difference between perfect and terrible." "Trust me," Naomi said with a smile. "It's far from perfect." She flexed her hands, fighting the familiar ache. The new medication regimen was working, but not every day. "Daddy," Lily burst through the door, returning from the hallway bathroom break. "Ms. Martinez says I can play in the winter recital." She paused for dramatic effect. "The real one, with the big kids." Jessie laughed and caught her as she climbed onto the couch. "That's amazing, princess." When did a knock at the practice room door cut him off? Through the small window, Naomi saw a familiar face, one she hadn't expected. Marissa, her pregnancy now in its final months. The room went still. Lily pressed closer to Jessie, sensing the shift in energy. Jessie stood, protective instinct already kicking in, but Naomi gently touched his arm. "It's okay," she said quietly. "I need to do this." Marissa stepped in hesitantly. Her stylish maternity outfit couldn't hide the fatigue. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. "The receptionist told me I might find you here." Jessie nodded, understanding. "Lily, how about we go find those chocolate chip cookies we saw in the cafeteria?" Once they were gone, Marissa remained standing. One hand protectively cradled her belly. "I've been trying to figure out how to reach out," she began. "After everything, the investigation, Julian." "Sit," Naomi offered, noticing how unsteady she looked. Marissa eased into the chair, eyes already glistening. "I didn't know," she said softly, "about the fraud, about the other families, about what he did to you. I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid," Naomi said gently. "Julian's an expert at showing people only what he wants them to see." "I had an interview with the police yesterday," Marissa said, her voice breaking. "Apparently the trust account he opened for the baby, it was funded with stolen money." She choked back a sob. "I don't know what to do. My family won't talk to me. My clients are gone, and I'm about to have a baby, whose father may be in prison." Naomi's fingers found the piano again, letting them play something soft, gentle. "When I was in the hospital," she said, "someone very wise told me that healing doesn't always look the way we expect it to." "How do you do it?" Marissa asked. "How do you rebuild?" "One day at a time," Naomi said. "One truth at a time." She thought of the journey, from hospital bed to here. "And you let people help, even when pride says not to." Her phone buzzed. A message from her doctor. Good news. Finally, the new treatment was working. Naomi thought of how many others might have missed their own shot at healing because of Julian's fraud. "I'm testifying next week," she told Marissa, "about the financial records, the insurance manipulation, all of it." "I know," Marissa replied softly. She sat a little taller. "They asked me to testify too." "The baby?" She glanced down at her stomach. "I want them to know their mother chose truth, even when it wasn't easy." Her voice wavered, but her eyes stayed locked on Naomi's, searching for reassurance and resolve. There was no glamour in what they were about to do, only grit and the quiet courage it took to tell the truth when silence would be easier. The practice room door creaked open, and Lily peeked in, chocolate chip cookie in hand. "Daddy said to ask if it's okay to come back." Naomi smiled and nodded. Jessie followed behind, arms full, extra cookies and 2 cups of chamomile tea from the college cafeteria. Marissa stood up too quickly and swayed. Jessie's paramedic instincts kicked in immediately. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't sugar?" he asked. I don't remember." He handed her a cookie and tea with quiet authority. "Start with this. Then we're going to Buddy's. Dorothy makes the best grilled cheese in Lincoln. And you," he added, "look like you need one." "I couldn't." "You can," Naomi said firmly. Her tone left no room for protest. It was the voice of someone who had learned, through scraped knees and sleepless nights, that sometimes strength meant allowing kindness in. Sometimes healing happens over grilled cheese and soup. "I learned that the hard way." Lily, who had been eyeing Marissa with curiosity, finally spoke. "Are you having a baby?" "My friend Emma's mom had a baby. She lets me feel it kick sometimes." The simple, honest question broke the last of the tension. Marissa smiled, truly smiled for the first time. "Would you like to feel? They're actually kicking right now." Lily stepped forward and placed her small hand gently on Marissa's belly. Her face lit up in awe, as if touching something sacred, something full of promise. In that moment, all the complicated adult truths fell away and only hope remained. Naomi watched the scene unfold. The ex-wife, the former mistress, a widowed paramedic, and his impossibly perceptive daughter, together in a college practice room, and somehow, it worked. Her fingers returned to the piano. Moonlight Sonata. This time, when she reached the challenging passage, she didn't pause at the mistake. She played through it, letting the beauty of the imperfect moment ring out. Outside, Lincoln's perpetual drizzle had finally relented, giving way to a hesitant sliver of sun. Somewhere across the city, lawyers were drafting charges, doctors were reviewing records, and justice was slowly taking shape. But in this soundproof room with its slightly detuned piano and strange little family of survivors, something more personal was happening. Not forgiveness, something messier, more honest. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about carrying the pain with grace, about letting each scar breathe instead of hiding it. Something about broken people, learning how to be a little less broken. Together. The federal courthouse towered beneath Lincoln's gray October sky, its marble steps slick with morning rain. Naomi stood at the base. Her dark blue blazer offered little defense against the cold. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from pain meds this time, but from the weight of what was ahead. "You forgot this." Jesse's voice broke through behind her. He held out her piano sheet music folder. She'd left it in his car after practice the night before. But they both knew she wasn't here to play music. "I can't do this," Naomi whispered. The words caught painfully in her throat. "Yes, you can." Jesse stepped closer, steady as ever. "Want to know how I know?" His voice was quiet, but sure, like an anchor dropped into stormy seas. Before she could answer, a small voice called out, "Naomi!" Lily was bounding up the courthouse steps, nearly slipping on the wet stone before Deandra caught her. The little girl wore a white dress with pink flowers, the one from her recital. In her hand she carried something small. "Sorry we're late," Deandra said, adjusting her scrubs under a rain jacket. She'd clearly come straight from a shift. Someone insisted on bringing something important. Lily stepped forward and held out her hand. "Laura's charm bracelet. Daddy says Mommy wore it when she had to be brave. You can borrow it today." Jesse inhaled sharply. Naomi looked at him, understanding the depth of what was being offered. His daughter, giving up her late mother's bracelet to help another woman find strength. "Lily," Naomi knelt, her voice thick, "that's so precious, but it belongs to you." "I'm sharing," Lily said, resolute. "Like you share piano time with me, please, for luck." Her small hand, clutching the bracelet, trembled ever so slightly, but her gaze was unwavering. Naomi's chest ached, not from fear, but from the overwhelming tenderness of being seen, being supported, being believed in. The courthouse doors opened, and Marissa emerged. Her face pale, but her back straight. The pregnancy was now almost full term, her hands protectively resting over her belly. "They're ready," she said softly. "Julian's legal team is trying to negotiate one last deal to avoid testimony." Naomi felt the old fury stir, but it was different now, sharper, purposeful. She looked at the people around her. Jesse, who had shown her real strength. Lily, offering borrowed courage in the form of silver. Deandra, who had seen her at her worst and never looked away. And Marissa, choosing truth over safety. They weren't just witnesses to her pain. They were the ones who stood beside her while she rebuilt. One truth at a time. Inside the courthouse, the prosecution waited. Evidence boxes stacked high, bank records, family testimonies, denied insurance claims. Julian had built an empire on manipulation, but today it would start to crumble. From the testimony of the women who had believed in him, who had been broken by him. Naomi entered the courtroom. "Your Honor." Julian's voice rang out across the chamber. He was already standing, ignoring his lawyer's protest. "Please, if I could just speak to my ex-wife," Naomi corrected, her voice calm, steady. Laura's bracelet caught the overhead light as she raised her right hand to be sworn in. "Miss Renee," the prosecutor began, "can you walk us through the events of April 15th when you were admitted to Lincoln General?" Naomi looked directly at Julian, not with hate, but with honesty. And then she spoke. The hospital room, the betrayal, the canceled insurance, the hidden accounts, each word stronger than the last, each date, each dollar amount, precise and damning. "And what made you decide to come forward?" The prosecutor waited. Naomi reached down and touched the charm bracelet on her wrist. Laura's. She thought of all the broken fragments that had led to this moment. "I realized," she said, voice calm and even, "that staying silent wasn't protecting anyone. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell your story." She paused, her gaze steady. Not for revenge, but because the truth matters. From the gallery, Lily beamed with pride. Jesse watched quietly, a hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Deandra dabbed her eyes with her sleeve. Marissa sat tall, ready for her own testimony. Julian's polished mask had fully cracked. His designer suit now looked like armor for a man who knew he'd already lost. When he tried to meet Naomi's gaze again, searching for even a sliver of connection, she didn't look away. But she didn't yield either. She no longer needed to. "One last question, Miss Renee," the prosecutor said. "How has this experience changed you?" Naomi thought of the upright piano in Jesse's living room, of Lily's dance recital, of chamomile tea in a red vinyl booth at Buddy's. She thought of improved lab results, of strength returning to her joints, of music flowing back into her life. "It taught me," she said, "that when everything falls apart, you discover what you're really made of. And that healing, it isn't just about getting better. It's about becoming whole, in a different way." Outside, Lincoln's rain had paused. Sunlight filtered softly through the high courthouse windows. The verdict hadn't come yet, but Naomi knew. This wasn't just about justice. It was about voice, about truth, about the kind of strength that's passed down, shared, and made stronger in the sharing. Laura's charm bracelet caught the light again, its tiny dancers twirling as Naomi's hand moved, a reminder that courage can be borrowed, inherited, and still utterly your own. 1 year later, the lights of Lincoln's Community Center auditorium shimmered like stars. Naomi sat at the grand piano, her fingers confident and fluid as the final notes of Moonlight Sonata echoed through the hall. No more hesitation, no more fragments. In the front row, Lily bounced on the edge of her seat between Jesse and Deandra. 6 now, her hair braided neatly, Laura's charm bracelet glittering on her small wrist. Returned to its rightful owner after the trial, but now holding new stories alongside old ones. As the crowd applauded, Naomi met Jesse's eyes. His smile was warm, familiar, rooted in quiet evenings beside a piano, breakfast at Buddy's, moments both simple and extraordinary. They had taken their time. Both had known pain, but both had chosen to heal, together. And now, the program director announced, Miss Renee will be joined by her student for a very special duet. Lily practically flew to the stage, her pink recital dress twirling, the matching flower in Naomi's hair a gentle nod to their bond. They began to play Heart and Soul. Lily's fingers picked out the melody, confident, steady. Naomi's added gentle harmony beneath. In the crowd, Deandra wiped away another tear, her pink digital watch glowing in the lights. Beside her sat Dorothy from Buddy's, who'd closed early to attend. And Maria, Lily's honorary grandmother, beamed beside them. Together, across the keys, old and new stories blended. Just like the people who had found one another in brokenness and built something whole. In the back row, nearly hidden in the shadows, sat Marissa. Her 8-month-old son slept soundly in her arms, his tiny hand wrapped tightly around her finger. She had named him Daniel after her grandfather. A new name, for a new beginning. The court-mandated restitution, pulled from Julian's seized assets, had allowed her to open a small wellness studio, prenatal yoga, guided meditations, helping other women find strength in moments of collapse. The duet ended to warm, generous applause. Lily beamed proudly as she stood to bow. Naomi's gaze swept across the crowd, faces that had become family. Not by blood, but by choice. Her chest swelled with something that felt like music, joy, pure and unfiltered. After the performance, they gathered in the community center's garden. Lincoln's evening air was crisp with late autumn roses, and fairy lights flickered in the trees above them. Lily, bracelet jingling, showed it off to anyone who would look. Now, a tiny piano charm dangled beside Laura's little dancer. "I have something for you, Jesse said softly, drawing Naomi aside. He held out a small blue envelope, slightly worn from sitting in his uniform pocket. Inside was a key. Simple brass, unremarkable except for what it meant. "You practically live at our place anyway," he said gently. "Lily's been asking when we'll make it official, but only if you're ready. We can take all the time you need." Naomi stared at the key. She thought of all the doors that had closed in her life, and the ones that had opened. The house she'd shared with Julian had been immaculate, but hollow. Jesse's home, full of warmth, Laura's piano, Lily's drawings taped to the fridge, had taught her what a real home could be. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, with conviction. "Yes." Lily appeared like magic between them. "Does this mean you'll be here every morning? For pancakes? And piano? And everything?" Naomi knelt to meet her eyes. "Is that okay with you?" Lily didn't answer with words. Just a fierce hug, the only answer she needed. "Well," Deandra called out, producing a bottle of sparkling cider from her oversized tote, "I think this deserves a proper toast." Dorothy handed out paper cups from her magical purse. Maria insisted on snapping photos, her granddaughter grinning proudly in each one. Marissa joined too, Daniel now awake, wide-eyed, absorbing the laughter and light. Under the strings of fairy lights, their patchwork family gathered, imperfect, healing, stronger together. Naomi felt it then, not just joy, but peace. The autoimmune disease was still part of her. It always would be. But now, it was only part of the story. Not the end. Some days were better, some days still hard. But none of it defined her anymore. The trial, Julian's conviction, justice had come. But this garden, this laughter, this joy, it wasn't about surviving what he did. It was about building something new, choosing to create from the pieces he tried to shatter. Jesse's hand found hers, warm, steady, certain. A charm bracelet on Naomi's wrist caught the light. New. A gift from Lily. A single charm. A tiny key. "Ready to go home?" Jesse asked softly. Naomi looked around at the family they'd gathered. Lily teaching Daniel to wave. Deandra swapping nurse stories with Dorothy. Maria arranging everyone into yet another photo. Her gaze drifted toward the window. To the piano that once belonged to Laura. Now theirs. Not just a memory, not just practice, but the beating heart of a home. "Yes," she whispered and meant it, with every healed, reclaimed part of her soul. 2 years after the trial, Naomi Elise Renee stood beneath the twinkle lights of her and Jesse's backyard. Their home. Officially. After a quiet fall wedding where Lily insisted on being both flower girl and ring bearer. The girl's laughter floated from the living room, where she now practiced piano with a determination that would have made Laura beam. Rain tapped gently against the covered patio Jesse had helped her build. But Naomi stayed dry, sipping chamomile tea in the cool Lincoln evening. Her most recent tests showed continued improvement. The disease hadn't disappeared, but she faced it now, with strength she never knew she had. Through the window, the living room glowed. Laura's piano, framed photos sitting atop it. The wall where Lily's height was marked in blue Sharpie. The couch where Jesse sometimes dozed after long shifts, always waking if someone needed him. Marissa had dropped Daniel off earlier for his weekly piano lesson. At 2 years old, he mostly banged keys, but Naomi didn't mind. She didn't see betrayal. She saw a promise, a life built on truth. The fraud case had led to a deeper investigation. Dozens of families, real justice. At Lincoln Community College, Naomi now taught accounting ethics. Each semester, she shared her story. Not for sympathy, but so students could learn what she once missed. How to listen to numbers and to people. Deandra still worked at Lincoln General, now leading a support program for patients with life-changing diagnoses. Jesse, still on shift, still saving lives, still home by dawn to share pancakes. And Lily, still playing piano every morning. The last piece of the song faded into Naomi's memory as she stepped inside, placing her mug near the photos. The house smelled of cinnamon and lavender. Laura's bracelet sat beside Lily's music books. Next to it, Naomi's own charm bracelet. The key still gleamed. But now, it wasn't just about going home. It was home. Every note, every person, every scar. They had built something true. Not perfect, but strong and still growing. She still wore the same pink digital watch, but now it sat just beneath a supervisor's badge, earned not through ambition, but through years of caring for broken bodies and healing hearts. Dorothy and Maria had become staples at family dinners, bringing equal parts comfort food and grandmotherly wisdom. Their little corner booth at Benny's Diner remained untouched by time. A sanctuary. A place where stories were shared, tears shed, and laughter stitched up old wounds. Inside, Lily struck a wrong note and burst into giggles. "Mom," she called, the words still fresh on her tongue, still precious between them. "Can you help me with this part?" Naomi touched the small key charm on her bracelet, smiling at how something so tiny could carry so much weight. The charm glinted softly in the afternoon light, a quiet symbol of promises remade and hope reawakened. It wasn't just metal, it was memory and trust and a future crafted note by note. Through the window, she saw Jesse walking up the garden path, his paramedic uniform still on, a takeout box from Dorothy's in one hand. The sight of him, solid, dependable, carrying something warm to share, made her chest ache in the best way. She had once believed love was a performance. Now she knew it was a rhythm you lived in, day after day. This wasn't the life she'd imagined years ago, back when she thought perfection meant silence and strength meant enduring quietly. This life, their life, was messier, louder, richer, defined by piano practice and family dinners, by shared burdens and borrowed courage, by love, the kind that blooms stronger through the cracks. "Coming, sweetheart," Naomi called back, gathering her tea and her thoughts. The piano waited, its keys carrying both memory and promise. And Naomi Elise Renee, no longer broken, no longer hidden, stepped forward into the warmth of her second chance, ready to play whatever melody life placed before her. So the story is over, our wonderful friends. Are you still here at this hour? If you're reading this now, if you followed Naomi's journey all the way through heartbreak, betrayal, recovery, and renewal, then maybe something in her story touched something deep inside you. And if it did, then I want to talk to you for a moment. Not as a narrator, not as a writer, just one human to another. You see, Naomi's story reminds us that healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in fragments. It comes in awkward piano notes, in a child's smile, in borrowed strength, and small acts of grace. Sometimes the most painful endings are actually the beginning of a new melody. We live in a world that tells us to move on, to be strong, to hide our cracks. But as the Japanese concept of kintsugi teaches us, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, our cracks are not signs of weakness. They are proof that we were broken and chose to be whole again. As author Brené Brown says, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. Naomi didn't win by fighting. She healed by choosing truth, kindness, and community. She didn't erase her pain. She carried it differently. That's the kind of strength we can all carry. So maybe right now you're in your own version of Chapter 6 or Chapter 12. Maybe you're still waiting for a moment of peace or a kind face at the door. Just remember, healing isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, broken pieces and all, and choosing to rebuild anyway. If Naomi's story made you feel seen, if it gave you hope or reminded you that you're not alone, please like, share, and subscribe. Your story matters, your voice matters. And if nothing else, let this be your reminder. You are not your past. You are not what broke you. You are what you build next. Thank you for being here. Let's keep telling stories that heal. Before you begin this compelling journey of rediscovery and strength, ask yourself, what happens when a husband's harsh words push his wife to the edge? Can a public insult become the fire that reignites a woman's true spirit? If you're ready to witness a moving transformation and a bold reclaiming of pride, then hit that like button now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another empowering story. And tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Chapter 1: The Breaking Point. Ethan stepped into the apartment that night with his usual cold, detached expression, like he carried the burden of the entire city on his back. Or at least that's what he wanted others to believe. Madison, who was in the kitchen finishing dinner, heard the door slam shut and instantly knew something was wrong. Over the past few years, she had learned to read the signs, the clipped tone of his voice, the heavy tread of his steps, and worst of all, the suffocating silence that always came before his fury. "Madison," he shouted from the living room, not even bothering to say hello or ask about the kids playing in their bedroom. "Did you look at this month's card bill? This is what you call being careful with money? Her heart started racing, and anxiety surged through her. No matter how she answered, she knew he'd turn it against her. With a dish towel still in hand, she cautiously stepped into the living room, where Ethan held the statement with a look of sheer disdain. "I bought some clothes for the kids and a few essentials for the apartment," she said, trying to stay composed. Ethan let out a laugh, but it wasn't from amusement. It was steeped in sarcasm and cruelty. "Essentials? Is that what you call it? You throw away my money on junk and act like it's justified." He took a step forward, thrusting the paper toward her face. "Look at this. A cosmetics shop? You really believe some face cream is going to fix what time's done to you?" Madison felt like she had been struck. His words were brutal, slicing right through her. She tried to respond, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to take care of myself a little." "Take care of yourself?" he scoffed. "Madison, look at you. Do you seriously think makeup and clothes are going to cover up what you've become? After 2 kids, you're not the woman I used to be proud of. Now, when I look at you, all I see is someone faded." He turned away, tossing the paper onto the table. "That's why I'm bringing Natalie to the corporate event on Saturday. At least she knows how to show up properly in public." Madison stood there, frozen. Had he really just said that? His young assistant. The words repeated in her head as she tried to process the sting. You're not serious," she murmured, tears filling her eyes. Ethan, unmoved, simply shrugged like it meant nothing. He poured himself a whiskey and went on. "Madison, listen closely to what I'm about to say." Olivia cut in as soon as Madison stopped speaking, her breath catching. "Enough. You can't let that man keep destroying you. You are not some piece of furniture in his home or a decoration he's grown tired of. You are an extraordinary woman. Do you hear me? Extraordinary. And you need to start believing that." "Olivia, it's not that simple," Madison replied, the weight of her friend's words pressing down on her. Though deep inside she knew Olivia was right. Trying to stand up after years of being torn down felt like moving mountains. Her heart ached with a familiar heaviness, a kind of quiet despair that had become too comfortable over the years. Every time she thought of breaking free, fear tangled around her resolve like vines. What would life even look like without Ethan? Without the routines, even if painful, that gave her world some kind of structure? "No, it's not simple," Olivia admitted. "But it's not impossible either. Think about yourself. Think about your kids. What are you showing them if you let someone treat you this way? Madison, you are not the shadow Ethan wants you to think you are. He's tried to dim your light, but it's still there. You just need to let it shine." Her words struck deep. Madison sat silently, staring down at the kitchen table, her eyes unfocused. She thought back to the beginning of her marriage, when she had been full of ambition and confidence. She remembered how she'd given up her job as a graphic designer to take care of her family, believing it was the best decision for everyone. But over time, Ethan had stripped her world of joy, replacing it with duty, criticism, and silence. He made sure she never forgot she wasn't enough. She remembered the countless nights she had cried quietly in the bathroom, dabbing tears with a towel so the kids wouldn't hear. The way Ethan's words clung to her, words that told her she was less, that she had become invisible, they echoed louder in moments of stillness. And now at this table, something inside her flickered. A small whisper, barely audible yet persistent. "Maybe you deserve more." "Madison, are you still there?" Olivia asked gently. "I'm here," she answered, her voice quiet but steady. "Good, because here's what we're going to do. I want you to stand up, go look in the mirror, and tell yourself, I'm worth more than this. Then I want you to think about what makes you happy, what you need. And this Saturday, when Ethan takes that girl to the event he disinvited you from, I want you to show him he can't erase you, that you're still that beautiful, strong, confident woman. Got it?" Madison stayed quiet for a moment. Something in Olivia's voice lit a tiny spark within her, a spark that began to burn through the fog of self-doubt. She imagined standing tall, not just in a mirror, but in her own skin. Could she still be that woman? Could she believe in herself again? For the first time in a long time, the idea didn't feel impossible. It felt necessary. "I'll try," she whispered, still unsure. "No," Olivia said firmly. "You're not going to try. You're going to do. And once you do, you'll see that Ethan has no hold over you. You choose who you are, not him. Madison ended the call feeling just a bit lighter, though her chest still ached. But Olivia's words planted something inside her. A seed of strength. You choose who you are, not him. The phrase looped in her mind as she cleared the dinner plates. That night, after tucking the kids into bed, Madison sat at the computer. She opened a browser and began searching. Salons, makeup tutorials, style guides. She felt nervous, but also a bit excited. Every click was a small act of rebellion, a tiny brick in a new foundation. In the next room, Ethan snored, oblivious to the change beginning inside his wife. Madison shut the laptop, a faint smile on her lips. There was still fear, but for the first time in ages, there was something more powerful: determination. But not anymore. Today, he was going to fund his own downfall. Madison could still hear Ethan's voice from the night before. Look at this cosmetics store. You still think some cream's gonna fix what time's done to you? Fury rose in her chest like a fire. If he truly believed she wasn't enough, then she'd show him just how wrong he was. And if his world revolved around money, status, and image, then his beloved credit card was about to become the weapon for his own lesson. With a wry smile tugging at her lips, Madison stood, grabbed her handbag, and walked out the door. The downtown Atlanta Lenox Pavilion Mall buzzed with morning energy. Madison entered with purpose in her step, focused on one goal: to reinvent herself. Her first stop, high-end fashion. She moved through the boutique corridor, her heart racing, not with anxiety, but with a thrilling mix of defiance and intent. She was no longer the quiet, self-effacing wife who tiptoed around spending for fear of Ethan's judgment. No, today she was something entirely different. Her footsteps echoed with purpose, each stride a silent rebellion. The polished windows reflected a woman who, for the first time in years, was walking into a space not to disappear, but to be seen. The scent of new leather, expensive perfumes, and polished wood infused the air with possibility. This was her battlefield, and she had arrived armed with courage and Ethan's platinum card. She stepped into one of the most exclusive designer boutiques and was greeted by a young associate dressed to perfection who offered a polished smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How may I assist you?" the associate asked. Madison inhaled deeply, lifting her chin, exuding a confidence she hadn't felt in years. "I need a full wardrobe," she said. "Dresses, trousers, blouses, everything, and I want each piece to turn heads." The associate blinked in surprise but quickly regained composure. "Right this way. We've just received a new collection that might be exactly what you're looking for." For the next 2 hours, Madison tried on elegant gowns that embraced her figure, silk tops that enhanced her complexion, and tailored pants that hugged her just right. With every glance in the mirror, she saw a part of herself returning, a version long buried beneath Ethan's constant disapproval. Each fitting felt like therapy. As zippers slid up and fabrics draped over her skin, she wasn't just dressing a body, she was reviving a soul. She watched as her shoulders straightened, her smile became less forced, more genuine. This wasn't indulgence. This was reclamation. "This red dress," the associate said, adjusting the fit of a sculpted piece around Madison's waist, "it's like it was designed just for you." Madison turned to the mirror. The material hugged her like a second skin, and the vivid red radiated strength and energy. She smiled, genuinely pleased. "I'll take it, and the black one, the emerald green, and whichever heels go with each." She walked out of the boutique with arms full of luxury shopping bags and a sensation she hadn't felt in ages: pride in herself. But she wasn't done yet. She wasn't going to overlook a single detail. Her next destination was a designer shoe store. She moved through the aisles with purpose, selecting heels that were refined and bold. Each pair felt like a statement. "I can stand on my own. I can walk with purpose." She picked black patent stilettos, red velvet pumps, and timeless beige heels that would match anything. The sales associate, clearly impressed, smiled as she rang up the purchase. "You've got excellent taste, ma'am. These shoes are just, wow, stunning." Madison offered a calm, confident smile. "Thank you. I deserve them." Her voice didn't waver, not even slightly. The simple phrase wasn't spoken with arrogance. It carried years of unspoken pain, silent resilience, and a quiet reclaiming of power. For so long, she had denied herself even the smallest indulgences. Now, each pair of shoes felt like an armor piece, shielding her against the years of doubt and emotional erosion. With even more shopping bags in hand, she stepped out and headed for the final piece of her transformation. The salon she walked into was among the most exclusive in all of Atlanta. Madison had heard whispers about it before, but had never dared to walk through its doors. Now, she pushed them open without a second thought. She was greeted by a stylist with a short, vibrant hairstyle who welcomed her warmly. "Welcome, ma'am. What can we do for you today?" Madison took a seat in front of a full-length mirror and inhaled deeply before answering. "I want a transformation, a full one. I don't want anyone to recognize me when I walk out of here. I want to be new." The stylist beamed, clearly energized by the challenge. "Then you came to the right place. Leave it all to us." As the stylist gathered tools and products, Madison's hands rested on her lap, clenched for a moment before relaxing. There was vulnerability in her request, but also courage to shed the shell she had been forced into for years. This wasn't just a makeover, it was a declaration. For hours, Madison surrendered to the process. First, they treated her hair with deep conditioning. Then came the scissors, snipping with precision, shaping a sleek, contemporary cut that perfectly framed her face. Once done, a warm-toned color was applied, giving her locks a vibrant, luminous finish. Afterward, she sat with a makeup artist who worked skillfully, lining her eyes in rich tones that deepened her gaze, blending earth-toned shadows that made them smolder. Her lips were painted a bold, luxurious red, confidence and power in a single swipe. Each brushstroke felt like a healing touch. As the colors bloomed across her face, Madison felt something unlocking inside her. A version of herself she thought had been lost forever. The mirror wasn't just glass now. It was a window to a self she was finally ready to reclaim. When Madison looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. It felt like rebirth. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers through her new hair. "What do you think?" the stylist asked. Madison smiled, and this time it wasn't tentative or unsure. It was the smile of someone who knew her worth. "I love it. It's perfect." At the counter, the receptionist handed her the total with a cheerful grin. Madison handed over Ethan's credit card without flinching. Let him pay for the damage he's done, she thought. That afternoon, Madison returned home, her arms full of bags. Her children ran to her with laughter and open arms, but Ethan wasn't there. He was still at the office, likely preparing for the weekend event, relishing his time with Natalie. Madison placed the bags in the bedroom and caught her reflection in the mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't see someone broken. She saw a strong, stunning woman reclaiming her identity. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop us a comment with your city or country. We love seeing how far these stories go. Chapter 3. The Grand Entrance. Saturday finally arrived, bringing with it Ethan's much-hyped company gala. Madison had orchestrated every piece of this day like a general mapping out a battle. Because deep down, that's exactly how it felt. A battle. This wasn't just a glamorous evening. It was her chance to show Ethan and herself that she wasn't the defeated woman he had described with his biting words. She was something far greater. At home, the atmosphere was stiff with tension. Ethan had spent the entire morning buried in calls and texts with his assistant Natalie, finalizing every detail for the evening. He left early to pick her up, not even acknowledging Madison or the kids. She watched him walk out the door with his usual air of smug self-importance, completely unaware of what was coming. "See you later, Madison," he said casually while adjusting his tie in front of the entry mirror. "And don't expect a call. I'll be tied up all night." Madison, standing at the sink pretending to be absorbed with dishes, barely turned her head. But inwardly, a wry smile curled on her lips. "You don't need to call me, Ethan," she thought. "We'll see each other very soon, and you won't be ready." As soon as Ethan left, Madison launched into action. She took Liam and Sophie to Olivia's house, who had eagerly offered to watch them. "Ready for the big reveal?" Olivia asked with a playful grin, taking the kids' backpacks. Madison nodded, her chest fluttering with a mix of nerves and anticipation. "More than ready," she answered with quiet determination, and though a faint sparkle in her eyes hinted at her inner vulnerability. Remember what I said, Olivia reminded her. Tonight isn't just about him. It's about you. You're stepping into the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Madison hugged her friend tightly. After saying goodbye to the kids, she returned to the salon for final preparations. This was her moment of full transformation. The salon staff greeted her like royalty. As soon as she removed her coat, they surrounded her, working in harmony to perfect every detail. Her hair, now styled in soft, luminous waves, cascaded down with graceful ease. Her makeup, refreshed for the occasion, intensified her eyes and gave her the look of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Finally, the moment came to slip into the red dress she had selected days earlier. It hugged her frame with precision, with a thigh-high slit that added just the right touch of boldness. She paired it with the black patent stilettos she had purchased. Sleek, commanding. Madison looked like she had stepped straight out of a fashion spread. Standing before the full-length mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time in years, she saw the woman Ethan had tried to erase. A vibrant, radiant woman, full of life and undeniably stunning. "Miss Madison, you look absolutely breathtaking," one of the stylists said, gazing at her with admiration. Madison smiled, and this time it wasn't a hesitant or shy expression. It was the smile of a woman who knew her value without question. "Thank you, I'm ready." The event was being held at an upscale hotel in downtown Atlanta. The ballroom lights sparkled like stars, casting a warm glow on the elegant decor. Soft orchestral music flowed through the air, adding a refined ambiance. Guests, executives, partners, top employees, and their dates walked the red carpet in evening gowns and tuxedos, ready for a night steeped in prestige. Ethan had already arrived, arm in arm with Natalie, who wore a tight, short dress that drew plenty of attention. Some of Ethan's colleagues shared discreet glances, clearly uneasy with his choice of date, but Ethan, as usual, was too self-centered to notice. "Ethan, how's Madison?" asked one of the senior partners, patting him on the back. Ethan tensed slightly but kept a casual tone. "Oh, she decided to stay in. These kinds of events aren't really her thing." He chuckled, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He quickly pivoted the conversation to avoid further questions. What Ethan didn't know was that Madison was already en route. When her car pulled up in front of the hotel, Madison took a deep breath before stepping out. The chauffeur opened the door, and as she emerged, the slit in her red dress revealed just a glimpse of her legs with each step. Every move toward the entrance turned heads. "Who is she?" whispered one of the staff helping guests with coats. "No idea," someone else replied, "but she looks like she walked off a movie set." The whispers spread as Madison glided through the hotel lobby, chin lifted, eyes forward, completely unaffected by the stares. When she reached the grand ballroom, conversations slowed to a hush. Every eye turned toward her, captivated. There was something about her presence, the way she moved, the power in her posture, that demanded attention. Ethan stood with his back to the entrance, laughing at something Natalie had said, when he noticed the sudden quiet in the room. His brow furrowed, and he slowly turned around, only to freeze in place. Standing at the entrance was Madison, looking like she owned the room. His eyes widened, and his mouth parted in shock. Was that her? For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Madison looked more stunning than he could ever recall. It wasn't just her appearance. It was her poise, her confidence, the unmistakable sense of independence that radiated from her. This wasn't the woman he had belittled for years. She was transformed. Beside him, Natalie shifted awkwardly. The attention she had once basked in was gone. Now, every glance, every whisper, every breath of awe in the ballroom was directed at Madison. "What the hell?" Ethan murmured under his breath. Madison, completely composed, walked further into the ballroom, ignoring him entirely. One of the company's senior partners, Mr. Langston, approached her with a warm, charismatic smile. "Good evening, madam. Have we met before?" he asked, clearly struck by her elegance. Madison responded with calm assurance, extending her hand. "I'm Madison, Ethan's wife." Langston's expression shifted from surprise to genuine awe, then to admiration. "Well, Ethan has certainly been keeping a treasure hidden. Please, join me at the main table. You deserve to be the center of this evening." Madison accepted the invitation with a grace that left Ethan frozen in place. As she walked beside Mr. Langston toward the table reserved for the firm's elite, the entire ballroom remained fixated on her. The atmosphere was electric with tension, and Ethan could feel his grip on his image, his authority, slipping away with every step she took. She was now seated among the company's most powerful figures, at the center of the evening's attention. Ethan, still rooted in his seat, could only watch the public unraveling of everything he thought he controlled. The woman he had dismissed, belittled, and pushed aside for years was now the one commanding the room. Whispers of admiration buzzed throughout the space, and each admiring glance aimed at Madison felt like a dagger digging deeper into Ethan's pride. Natalie, who had been soaking in attention just moments earlier, now fidgeted beside Ethan. Her outfit, once bold and eye-catching, now looked garish and inappropriate next to Madison's effortless sophistication. She leaned closer to Ethan, trying to draw his gaze back. "Ethan," she whispered, attempting to smile. But his eyes never left Madison, his expression dark with disbelief and barely restrained fury. A colleague nearby leaned in and asked, "Who is she? You never mentioned your wife before. She's remarkable." Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing a stiff, artificial smile. "Oh, that's Madison, my wife. She usually doesn't attend these types of functions." He tried to sound dismissive, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. His colleague raised a brow, unconvinced. "Well, maybe she should. She has more presence than anyone else in this room." That comment hit Ethan like a slap. His composure, his status, the image he had carefully cultivated, everything was unraveling in front of a room full of witnesses. Meanwhile, Madison carried on her conversation with Mr. Langston and the other high-level guests at the table. Her laugh was light, her eyes sparkled with self-assurance. She looked like she had belonged there all along. Unable to stand it any longer, Ethan pushed back from his seat and stood abruptly, ignoring Natalie's desperate glance. "Where are you going?" she whispered, but Ethan didn't respond. He strode toward the main table, his face hardened with fury. All around, the volume of murmurs rose. Every guest turned their eyes toward the scene unfolding, waiting for the confrontation to begin. "Excuse me," Ethan said in a cold, clipped tone, cutting into the conversation Madison was having with Mr. Langston and the others at the table. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice, but just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Can we speak in private?" Madison slowly looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was no fear there, no submission, just calm composure that immediately unsettled him. "Of course not, Ethan," she replied, her tone serene as she took a sip of her wine. "If there's something you need to say, go ahead. I've got nothing to hide." Her words knocked the air from his lungs. He had expected her to rise, to follow him without hesitation like she always did. But instead, she stood her ground, in front of everyone. "I don't think this is the place for that," he muttered, his voice sharper now, trying to maintain control. Madison gently set her glass back on the table and folded her hands in her lap. Then she looked him straight in the eyes, unflinching. "This? Do you mean the fact that I'm not sitting at home while you show off tonight? Or are you referring to me proving that I'm not the faded version of myself you created so you could feel superior?" Mr. Langston, seated beside her, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. The rest of the table feigned interest in their drinks, but the tension was undeniable. Everyone was listening. Ethan clenched his fists, leaning in closer as his voice dropped to a whisper. "Madison, don't make a scene. This isn't a game." She smiled, but there was steel behind it now. "A scene? A game?" she echoed, her voice calm but firm. "Ethan, do you think all the years of your belittling, your criticism, your humiliation were a game?" She paused deliberately, letting the silence fill with weight. "This isn't a scene, Ethan. It's a reminder. So you never forget who I really am." Ethan felt unsteady, as if the floor beneath him had shifted. For years he had called the shots, decided what mattered, who mattered. But now, Madison stood before him with something he thought he had buried forever, her dignity. The silence around the table was heavy. Mr. Langston, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke. "Madison, I must say, you've truly impressed us tonight. It's rare to meet someone with such presence and grace. I hope we'll be seeing more of you at future events." Madison thanked him with a soft, genuine smile. Ethan, meanwhile, turned toward Mr. Langston with a look torn between envy and disbelief. He could feel his grip on everything slipping. Well, Madison said, her tone smooth and poised, perhaps in the future, I'll be a regular guest. She knew perfectly well the blow that line delivered to Ethan's pride. Across the room, Natalie watched it all unfold. She felt invisible, diminished. Her plan to steal the spotlight had collapsed entirely. No one was looking at her. No one was whispering her name. All eyes were on Madison, the woman who, according to Ethan, shouldn't even be there. Ethan tried to reclaim control. Mr. Langston, excuse me, but I need a word with my wife in private. This is a personal matter. Mr. Langston turned toward him, raising an eyebrow. Ethan, I think Madison is perfectly comfortable where she is, and honestly, it seems she has much more to say tonight. The quiet laughter that followed at the table felt like a slap to Ethan's face. There was no escaping the humiliation now. Madison met his gaze with unwavering calm, and it rattled him. Don't worry, Ethan, she said gently. If you need a moment to collect yourself, I can wait. I'm in no rush. Ethan clenched his jaw. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't make things worse. Madison had won this round, and she had done it publicly. As she resumed her conversation with Mr. Langston and the others, Ethan turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff and his expression hardened. The evening he had meticulously planned had collapsed into disaster. He returned to his table like a man defeated, every step heavier than the last. He could feel the eyes following him, some surprised, others disdainful, but all of them witnesses to the moment his carefully built image cracked. Madison had flipped the narrative, and he had no idea how to recover. When he reached the table, Natalie greeted him with an uneasy glance, fully aware that the energy in the room had shifted. Her flirtatious confidence was gone, replaced by awkward insecurity. She attempted to restart the conversation. Ethan, she said, leaning closer, what just happened? Why didn't you tell me she was coming? He turned toward her slowly, his eyes dark with restrained fury. I didn't know, he replied through gritted teeth, the bitterness in his voice unmistakable. Natalie forced a smile, trying to minimize the damage. Well, don't worry. No one really cares that much. Shut up, Natalie, he snapped, cutting her off abruptly. You have no idea what you're talking about. The sharpness in his voice stunned her, making her shrink back into her seat, hurt and embarrassed. Ethan's eyes drifted back to the head table, back to Madison. She hadn't even spared him a glance. And yet, she was dismantling the image he had worked so hard to craft. She didn't need him to shine, and that reality shattered him. Meanwhile, Madison was savoring every second of her victory. Every exchange with Mr. Langston and the other partners affirmed everything Ethan had tried to strip away from her. Her self-worth, her confidence, her voice. For years, he had convinced her she wasn't enough, that her place was in the shadows while he basked in the spotlight. But tonight, the entire ballroom saw her for what she truly was, a woman of strength, elegance, and undeniable presence. Madison, Mr. Langston asked, leaning in with genuine curiosity, have you ever considered taking on corporate interior design projects? Madison turned toward him with interest. Well, I used to work as an interior designer, Madison said, her tone even, but I stopped after getting married. Though she delivered the words calmly, a small knot twisted in her stomach. Saying it out loud, acknowledging the sacrifice she had made for Ethan, still stung. It wasn't just the loss of a job. It was the loss of her identity, of the vibrant woman who once saw beauty in every space and color palette. The woman who used to dream in mood boards and design plans. She'd buried that version of herself quietly, little by little, until she barely remembered what it felt like to create something for herself. Mr. Langston nodded thoughtfully. That's unfortunate. From what I've seen tonight, I can tell you have a sharp eye for detail. If you ever think about returning to the field, I believe you'd be highly successful. Actually, my company is preparing to renovate a few of our offices. He let the offer hang in the air, the implication unmistakable. Madison smiled, a flicker of excitement lighting in her chest. Could she really reclaim that part of her life? The possibility stirred something inside her, a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that she might revive a piece of herself long buried. Fear of believing too soon that life could offer her more. But most of all, it was possibility. And it felt electric. Thank you, Mr. Langston. I'll give it serious thought. Her voice was sincere, and her smile was warm. Mr. Langston seemed genuinely pleased with her response, and their conversation flowed on naturally, completely disregarding Ethan's smoldering glare from across the ballroom. As the evening progressed, Ethan noticed something far worse than admiration for Madison. People had begun whispering about him. He couldn't catch all the words, but he didn't need to. The disapproving looks said it all. The murmurs held the same unspoken question. How could a man like him treat a woman like her that way? Each glance felt like a pinprick, tearing at the fragile image he had constructed for years. It was no longer just about losing control over Madison, it was about losing the respect of his peers. His image, the mask he wore so confidently, was cracking. A thin sheen of sweat began to form on his brow. Never before had Ethan felt his reputation threatened. He had always been the accomplished one, the one others respected, the one in control. But now, he was just the man who had been eclipsed by the very woman he had tried to diminish. He couldn't take it anymore. Abruptly, he stood, ignoring Natalie, who looked at him with quiet desperation. "Where are you going?" she whispered, but he didn't reply. He marched directly toward the head table where Madison sat, still the center of the evening's attention. "You seem to be enjoying yourself, Madison," he said bitterly, his voice sharp with tension. Madison glanced up with composure, as if she had been expecting the interruption. "I am, Ethan. Thanks for asking." Her voice was soft, almost playful, and it hit him hard. "Can we talk now?" he pushed, his irritation rising with her poise. Before Madison could reply, Mr. Langston stepped in. "Ethan, with all due respect, Madison appears to be enjoying the evening. Perhaps you could wait until it concludes." His tone was courteous but firm, leaving no room for argument. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Since when had his business partner spoken to him like that? "This is a personal matter," he said stiffly, clinging to what little control he had left. Madison, who had remained quiet, finally turned toward him with steady eyes. "I believe Mr. Langston is right," she said. "This isn't the time or the place." Then she added with a cool edge, "And besides, I have nothing more to say to you for now." The weight behind her words silenced him completely. That one phrase, "for now," made it clear that she held the reins now. Ethan stood frozen, fists clenched, jaw tight. He had nothing left to say, because Madison had taken everything back. He couldn't win this battle, not here, not now. Madison turned back to Mr. Langston, entirely dismissing Ethan, who was left standing there and forced to retreat under the curious stares of the entire room. That walk back to his seat felt like a lifetime. Each pair of eyes in the ballroom was a silent witness to his downfall. Each glance a reminder that the power he once wielded so effortlessly had evaporated in a single evening. As Ethan returned to his table, Natalie tried to speak, but he silenced her with a sharp wave of his hand. His jaw was tight, and his face flushed with humiliation. But beyond the anger, what truly shook him was the fear. Fear that he had been exposed, not just as a man who lost control, but as a man who never truly had it to begin with. Madison was no longer the meek, compliant woman he once controlled. She had become a force, and he had no idea how to stop her. Ethan was unraveling. He had never experienced such a crushing blow to his ego and authority. Madison, the woman he had subdued for years, hadn't just slipped out of his grip. She now radiated with a confidence that outshined him in front of every one of his peers. And worst of all, she was making him look weak. Small, laughable. Sitting at his table, fists clenched, Ethan tried to think, how do I get back control? But nothing came. Every old tactic, his cutting words, his manipulation, his control, they were powerless now. She was beyond reach. His mind scrambled, reaching for anything that could restore the balance, but every thought led to a dead end. He had underestimated her resolve, and now he was paying the price. Natalie, still beside him, attempted to salvage the moment, babbling about the decor and other guests, but Ethan couldn't stand to even look at her. Everything she symbolized, her youth, her looks, the shallow image he had tried to craft, now felt hollow. Compared to Madison, Natalie looked immature, out of place, pointless. He suddenly saw her not as an accessory to boost his ego, but as a symbol of everything superficial and fleeting, while Madison now stood as something real, solid, and utterly beyond his reach. Unable to endure the humiliation any longer, Ethan stood again. He wouldn't let Madison keep undermining him, not in front of everyone. He would confront her, even if it meant creating a scene. Madison was deep in conversation with Mr. Langston and the others when she sensed Ethan coming. This time she met his eyes. Her look was calm but unyielding. She didn't flinch. "Madison," Ethan said sharply, "we need to talk. Now." Mr. Langston raised an eyebrow, clearly irritated. "Ethan, we already addressed this earlier. Madison is occupied." "This has nothing to do with you, Langston," Ethan snapped. But Mr. Langston didn't budge. Before the tension could grow, Madison stepped in. "It's all right, Mr. Langston." She stood gracefully, wine glass in hand. Her composure didn't waver. "If Ethan wants to talk, I'm willing to hear him out." Ethan let out a heavy breath, relieved to finally get her attention. But before he could move to another room, Madison added, "Right here is fine. There's nothing Ethan has to say that can't be said in front of everyone." Her tone was steady. Her eyes dared him to proceed. If Ethan wanted a confrontation, she would give it to him. But on her terms. The people at the table shifted uneasily. No one wanted to interfere. But no one looked away either. Everyone was visibly invested in what was about to unfold. Ethan, cornered by his own ego, had no choice but to accept the condition. "You really want to do this here?" he asked through gritted teeth, trying to pressure her into backing down. Madison returned a cool, unwavering smile. "You were the one who insisted on talking, Ethan. I'm listening. Go ahead." Ethan looked around, the weight of every gaze in the ballroom settling on his shoulders. There was no escape now. "Fine," he muttered, his voice strained. "What the hell are you trying to prove, Madison? Why come here like this, just to wreck my night? Is this some childish payback?" Madison took a casual sip of her wine, her expression unfazed. "Wreck your night?" she echoed with biting irony. "No, Ethan, I didn't come here for you. I came for me, because I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible. Tonight, I wanted to remind you, and me, exactly who I am." Ethan clenched his fists in fury. He was losing the upper hand, and he knew it. "And you think this makes you look good?" he snapped, his voice rising. "You think walking in here like you own the place makes you some kind of queen? Madison, you're making a fool of yourself." A heavy silence followed. His words landed like a slap, but Madison didn't flinch. She remained poised, calm, immovable. "Foolish?" she repeated softly. "Is that what you think, Ethan?" "I'm not surprised. You've always been good at tearing me down, haven't you?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it struck with laser precision. "For years, you've mocked me, belittled me, made me feel like I was never enough, but not tonight. Tonight, Ethan, you don't get to control me anymore." Her words rippled through the room like thunder. Conversations stopped, heads turned. Ethan stood speechless for the first time, his mouth slightly open, searching for a retort, and finding none. "You've always been terrified someone might find out who you really are," Madison continued, stepping closer, her tone sharp and steady. "A man who has to crush others just to feel powerful. But tonight everyone sees the truth. Everyone sees you." Ethan felt the floor slipping from beneath him. Never in his life had he been confronted so directly, much less in front of his colleagues and peers. He scrambled for something, anything to say. But nothing came. Madison had stripped away every illusion, every layer of control, and he had no defense left. Finally, Madison took a final sip of her wine and placed the glass gently on the table. She looked at Ethan with a serene smile. "Thank you for inviting me tonight, Ethan. It's been quite enlightening." With that, she turned and walked back to her seat, leaving Ethan frozen in place, humiliated, defeated, exposed. As Madison resumed her conversation with Mr. Langston and the others, Ethan stood there for a moment longer, his pride shattered, before turning silently and walking out of the ballroom. He didn't say a word, he didn't look back, and he left Natalie sitting alone at their table, awkward, confused, and abandoned. That night, as the music played and laughter filled the room, Madison knew she had reclaimed something Ethan had tried for years to break: her dignity, her voice, and most importantly, her freedom. Chapter 4: The Path to Freedom. Madison woke the next morning in the guest bedroom of Anna's home. Sunlight poured through the soft curtains, and the distant sound of her children playing in the living room brought a gentle smile to her lips. She had slept in peace. No tension, no fear, no Ethan. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, like a heavy burden had finally lifted off her shoulders. Sitting up in bed, Madison closed her eyes briefly, replaying the moments from the night before. Her powerful entrance, Ethan's stunned reaction, and the words she had delivered without trembling. She had never imagined herself capable of confronting him so publicly, but she had. And she had prevailed. Now, with her mind clear, Madison knew this wasn't just a personal win. It was a turning point, the beginning of something far more permanent. She rose, washed her face, and gazed into the mirror. What she saw looking back was not the same woman from months ago. Her hair, still styled from the night before, framed a face filled with purpose. The old uncertainty in her eyes was gone, replaced with resolve. There was fire now. There was strength. There was a woman who finally knew her worth. In the kitchen, Anna was waiting with a warm cup of coffee and her usual gentle smile. "Well, how does the star of last night feel this morning?" Anna asked, sliding over another mug. Madison sat at the table and wrapped her hands around the cup, savoring the warmth. "I feel free," she said with a quiet but certain smile. "And ready." Anna lifted an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Madison took a sip, then looked her friend directly in the eyes. "Ready to end this. I'm filing for divorce." Anna set her cup down with a soft thud, caught off guard. "Are you sure?" "More than ever," Madison replied without missing a beat. "Last night wasn't just about standing up to him. It was about ending it, for good. Ethan has belittled me for years, Anna, treated me like I was disposable, something he could control, then toss aside when it suited him. But that ends now. I'm not that woman anymore." Anna looked at her quietly for a long moment, letting the words sink in. Then a proud smile slowly spread across her face. "That's the Madison I always knew was there." Madison reached across the table and gently squeezed her friend's hand. "Thank you for everything, Anna. For looking out for me. For taking care of the kids. For reminding me who I really am. I couldn't have done this without you." Her voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming gratitude that surged in her chest. This was the first time in a long while she had felt truly seen. "Don't thank me," Anna said with a warm but firm tone. "Just promise me you'll never lose yourself again." Madison nodded, and in her eyes there was no doubt, no hesitation. There was no going back. Later that day, Madison returned to her house with the kids. As she drove, her mind was steady. She knew what was coming wouldn't be easy, that Ethan would resist, but she also knew she was ready. The silence inside the car wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. And every glance at her children in the rearview mirror reminded her of why she had to stand strong. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. When they arrived, the children ran happily to their rooms, laughing and playing, while Madison walked into the living room. Ethan was there, sitting on the couch, glued to his phone. His brow was furrowed, and he looked worn, still clearly rattled from the night before. He looked up as she entered. "So you finally decided to come home," he said sarcastically, setting the phone on the table. "Had fun playing the runaway wife at your friend's place while I cleaned up your little show?" Madison met his tone with calm indifference. "Ethan, we need to talk." He blinked, surprised by her poise. "Talk about what?" She sat across from him, her posture tall, her voice unwavering. "I'm filing for divorce." The words didn't tremble. They were measured and strong, spoken like a verdict, not a question. The words hit like a punch. Ethan stared at her as if he didn't understand. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Madison replied. "I want a divorce. This is over." He let out a dry, bitter laugh. "You've lost your mind, Madison. After everything I've given you, after all these years, you're seriously just going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," she said. "You did that, Ethan. When you chose to degrade me, when you put your pride and image above your family, you ended this long ago. I'm just making it official." Ethan stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're overreacting. Last night, it was just a misunderstanding. I was mad, that's all. You know I didn't mean anything by it." His voice cracked with desperation, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew the excuses were weak and worse, ineffective. He stumbled over his words, trying to find something that would stick. Madison raised a hand to silence him. Don't give me excuses. I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you that this will be resolved, but not on your terms anymore. We'll do this in court." Ethan's expression hardened. "What are you saying?" "I know my rights," she said clearly. "I'm entitled to half of everything. The house, the savings, all of it. You can fight, but I'm not backing down. I won't be your doormat anymore. I'm done letting you humiliate me." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. His jaw tightened as he struggled to hold back his anger. "Oh, so now you're a legal expert too, Madison?" Ethan scoffed bitterly. "Where did this version of you come from?" Madison stood up slowly, meeting his eyes head-on. "It came from the pain you caused me. It came from the nights I cried myself to sleep because of your words. It came from the years I spent believing I wasn't enough." Her voice didn't shake. Her spine was straight, her chin lifted, not out of defiance, but because she finally understood the weight she had carried for so long. And she was done carrying it. She took a step forward. "And now, Ethan? That broken woman you left behind, she's standing. And I promise you, she's never gonna fall again." Each word landed like a hammer, measured, deliberate, and irrevocable. Ethan stared at her, trying to assert dominance, but it was futile. She wasn't the same woman anymore. "This will be settled in court," Madison repeated calmly. "And I don't care how long it takes. I'll make sure I get everything I'm owed. And you? You're going to learn what it means to treat people like trash." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She had taken away even his last weapon, intimidation. Without another word, Madison turned and walked to her room, closing the door behind her. She exhaled deeply, a mix of finality and liberation washing over her. She had taken her power back, and she wasn't going to lose it again. Ethan remained motionless on the couch, stunned by everything she'd said. Her words echoed in his head. "You're never going to use me as a doormat again. This is going to be resolved legally. You're going to learn that you can't treat people the way you treated me." For the first time in his life, Ethan was truly lost. He had always called the shots, always dictated the rules, but now the game had changed, and he was no longer in control. The walls of the home he once ruled now felt foreign, every corner echoing with a sense of defeat he couldn't escape. Suddenly, he jumped to his feet and stormed to his office, slamming the door. He immediately began making calls. His first call was to a lawyer friend, but the response wasn't what he wanted to hear. "Ethan," the voice on the other end said bluntly, "if Madison takes this to court, you're in trouble. She has every right to half of everything, especially if you've used joint finances for personal spending." Ethan was silent, the reality beginning to set in. All his bravado, all his years of manipulation, it was all unraveling. Madison wasn't bluffing, and worse, she was informed. That night, Ethan tossed and turned in bed while Madison lay beside him, sleeping soundly, peacefully. That infuriated him more than anything. How could she be so calm? How could she already be at peace, like she had won? But deep down, Ethan knew the answer. Because she had. The next morning, Madison woke up early as usual, but this time something was different. Her energy was focused, centered, strong. She made breakfast for Liam and Sophie, helped them get dressed and ready for school, while Ethan stayed holed up in his office, avoiding her completely. Once the children were gone, Madison sat down in the living room, a folder in her hand. Inside was everything she had gathered over the last few days. Bank statements, legal notices, financial records. Madison had everything neatly organized in a folder on the coffee table. Every page was evidence, every detail, a step toward freedom. She was in control now. And for the first time in her life, that control didn't feel like borrowed courage. It felt earned, tangible, irrefutable. When Ethan finally emerged from his office and saw Madison sitting there, that folder spread open in front of her, his chest tightened. He immediately sensed the confrontation was coming. "What's that?" he asked sharply, gesturing toward the folder. Madison looked up at him, completely unshaken. "Everything I need for the divorce." Her voice carried no bitterness, just fact, as unmovable as the ground beneath her feet. Ethan's jaw clenched. Frustration surged through him. "You're really going to go through with this? Do you even understand what you're doing?" Madison crossed her legs slowly, her tone steady. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking back my life, with or without your cooperation." Her gaze never wavered. It pierced through every empty excuse he might have been preparing. Ethan scoffed, searching for a way to regain control. "And what do you think you're going to get out of this? Money? Payback? Madison, do you really believe you'll come out of this better than you already are?" She looked at him with unwavering resolve. "It's not about money or revenge. It's about respect. It's about never letting anyone treat me the way you have. This isn't to punish you, Ethan. It's to liberate me from you. Each word fell like a final verdict. She wasn't here to debate. She was here to declare. Her words landed hard. Ethan stood still, staring at her, trying to find something, anything, that would give him the upper hand again. But the power had shifted, and he could feel it slipping further with every breath she took. "What about the kids?" he asked finally, clutching for leverage. "You want to rip their family apart? You're going to ruin their lives, Madison." She didn't even flinch. "The only thing I'm tearing down is the example you were setting for them. I won't let them grow up thinking it's normal for a woman to be disrespected, or that a man has the right to dominate someone's life. They'll be just fine, because now they have a mother who knows what she's worth." Her tone held steel, not spite. She was fighting for more than herself now. Ethan was stunned into silence. Over the following days, Madison began taking real action. She met with a lawyer who walked her through every aspect of the case. The attorney confirmed what she already suspected. Her claim was solid. Her rights were intact. She also started seeing a therapist, something she had postponed for years. She needed to process the damage Ethan had done, not just legally, but emotionally. She wasn't just fighting in court. She was healing. Layer by layer, she was peeling off the pain until only strength remained. Every choice, every meeting, every step she took was part of a larger plan, her rebirth. And Ethan? He was unraveling. He walked through the house like a ghost, haunted by the reality that he no longer held the reins. The silence that used to punish her now punished him. Each time he saw Madison standing tall, moving with a quiet certainty, it triggered a storm inside him. Rage, fear, disbelief. He couldn't stop her. He knew that now. Still, one evening, he tried again, his voice softer this time, controlled, calculated. "Madison," he began, "can't we work this out just between us? No lawyers, no court. We don't have to turn this into a public mess. Let's handle it discreetly." Madison looked Ethan squarely in the eyes, not a trace of hesitation in her gaze. "A discreet solution?" she repeated slowly. "You mean keeping everything quiet and hidden, like you've always preferred?" "No, Ethan. Not anymore. This isn't going to be secret, because I have nothing to hide, and neither should you." Ethan's jaw tightened. He was quickly running out of angles, and he knew it. "What did you even get out of this, Madison?" he asked, almost desperate now. She rose from her chair, picked up the folder of documents, and gave him one last look before walking toward her room. "I got something you never understood," she said quietly. "I got my freedom." With that, she left the room, leaving Ethan alone to face the truth. He had lost her, for good, and there was nothing he could do to change that. Through Madison's journey, there's something every woman should remember. Your worth is not determined by anyone else. Don't let cruel words, humiliation, or criticism put out your inner flame, because within you lies a strength that can lift you up, even in the darkest times. Being a mother, a homemaker, or pursuing any path you choose does not make you less. You are capable, valuable, and worthy of respect. No one has the right to make you feel small, not because of your appearance, your choices, or your sacrifices. Love and self-worth start with you. Toxic relationships and emotional abuse, whether public or private, should never be normalized or tolerated. If someone tries to tear you down or make you feel unworthy, remember this: you don't need anyone to validate your power. You deserve respect, dignity, and love. And if someone tries to crush your spirit, know this: you can rise again, because the strength inside you cannot be destroyed. You are not alone. Seek support, learn your rights, surround yourself with people who uplift and appreciate you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Like Madison, you have the power to reclaim your life, rebuild your confidence, and rediscover the extraordinary woman you've always been. You are powerful. You are valuable. You are enough. So, that's how the story ends. Or perhaps begins again, don't you think? And if you're still here, still watching or reading until this very moment, then maybe, just maybe, something in Madison's journey has touched your heart in a quiet, powerful way. If so, take a moment with me now. Let's look at this not just as a story, but as something we can carry into our own lives. Madison's transformation wasn't just about red dresses or dramatic entrances. It was about rediscovering her self-worth. It was about walking through fire and realizing she could survive without waiting for permission. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Madison took back her freedom not by fighting Ethan with anger, but by stepping into her power with grace. How many times have we stayed silent just to keep the peace? How many times have we convinced ourselves we're too broken, too late, too tired to start again? Madison's story reminds us that healing begins the moment we say, "No more." Remember, healing isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet decision at your kitchen table, a whisper that says, "I am enough." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." If this story stirred something in you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. There are more stories like this waiting for you. More reminders that even when life tries to dim your light, you are still the flame. Thank you truly for being here. You matter, and your story's not over yet. We'll see you in the next one.